purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When there is a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. Purport. Hearing discussions among the devotees is the only means to receive the powerful message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For instance, Bhagavad Gita has been well known all over the world for a very long time, especially in the Western world. But because the subject matter was not discussed by devotees, there was no effect. Not a single person in the West became Krishna conscious before the Krishna consciousness movement was founded. But when the same Bhagavad Gita was presented as it is through the disciplic succession, the effect of spiritual realization was immediately manifested. Sanat Kumara, one of the Kumaras, informed Prithu Maharaj that his meeting with the Kumaras benefited not only Maharaj Prithu, but the Kumaras as well. When Narada Muni questioned Lord Brahma about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma thanked Narada Muni for giving him a chance to speak about the Supreme Lord. Therefore, questions put by a saintly person to another saintly person about the Supreme Personality of Godhead or about the ultimate goal of life surcharge everything spiritually. Whoever takes advantage of such discussions is benefited both in this life and in the next. The word ubhayesham can be described in many ways. Generally, there are two classes of men, the materialists and the transcendentalists. By hearing discussions between devotees, both the materialists and transcendentalists are beneficial or benefited. The materialist is benefited by association with devotees because his life then becomes regulated so that his chance of becoming a devotee or making the present life successful for understanding the real position of the living entity is increased. When one takes advantage of this opportunity, he is assured of a human form of life in the next birth, or he may be liberated completely and go back home, back to Godhead. The conclusion is that if one participates in a discussion of devotees, he is both materially and spiritually benefited. The speaker and the audience are both benefited, and the karmis and jnanis are benefited. The discussion of spiritual matters among devotees is beneficial for everyone, without exceptions. Consequently, the Kumaras admitted that not only the king was benefited by such a meeting, but the Kumaras were as well. Sangama khalu sadhunam ubhayesham cha sammata yasambhashan samprashna sarvesham vitanotisham. When there is a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanusute Devi pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayati girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinatharinam. It is my pleasure and honor to be with you and to try to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. I must say I feel uncomfortable sitting here in this surrounding. I wish I would just hear from Sachinandan Maharaj, from Utkalika Vallari, but I was asked, so I thought this is a nice, wonderful topic, and then I can try to add something to it in whatever way I can. So I thought, when looking at the surrounding of this wonderful picture of Radha Govindaji and Rupa Goswami writing, this reminded me of the place where Rupa Goswami wrote many of his books, especially Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Terkadamba. I guess many of you have been there, who have been in Terkadamba. Oh, so you have wonderful memories, I suppose, and this is the place still preserved in its natural environment. There are nice trees. It's a wonderful place. So you all know this story, how Rupa Goswami was thinking of receiving his brother Sanatana Goswami, but he didn't know what to give him. Normally in the Vedic culture, hospitality is so important. You have to receive your guests and give prasad. But he didn't have, being a bhikshu, a beggar. And by meditating like that, a girl came, very beautiful, and presented him with very nice food, which he used and prepared wonderful prasad. And when Sanatana Goswami came, he offered, and they took prasad, and Sanatana Goswami asked, "Where did you get that?" So Prabhupada tells that story a few times. It's even in the book Science of Self-Realization at the end. And Prabhupada tells it in a very heart-touching way, very emotional, and he says, well, so when Sanatana heard this, he was suspicious. Who is that girl exactly who brought that? And Rupa Goswami said, well, she said she's from the nearby village, and her mother sent her because there was a wedding. And she said, we have to give away prasad to all sadhus. And when Sanatana Goswami heard that, he said, I don't know such a girl. And there was no wedding in the village. And we know that he said, like Prabhupada said, and he was like, after finding out who is that, oh, she was very beautiful, and etc. And then they all realized, oh, that was Srimati Radharani. And Sanatana Goswami said, oh, we did such a mistake. We received service from Srimati Radharani. So I'm telling this story not for that point that we always aspire to be servants, not receivers of service, but this specific moment where Sanatana Goswami said, there is no marriage in the nearby village. Because this is interesting, and we know from history that he was doing parikrama every day, around the long parikrama around Govardhan. But not just walking, he was stopping and talking with villagers. He was personally friend with all the locals, and he was very much appreciated. Even till today, he's remembered for his help and counseling. Whenever they had problems and issues or conflicts, they always approached him, and he was very expert in always finding a solution that everyone is satisfied. So this is something which I thought can bring you to your attention as an example and an illustration how even the Paramahamsa Babajis, like the 6 Goswamis who have renounced the Lord, Tyaktva Turnam Ashesha Mandalapati, they were highly, highly elevated in society, but they gave it up. Ashesha Mandala means the top, the cream of society, and they gave it up to become beggars and be absorbed in the service which Lord Chaitanya gave them. And Lord Chaitanya gave them specific service to revive Vrindavan and its holy places, and to write books for the benefit of a whole humanity. That's what we recite every morning. Nana Shastra Vikarana, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunau Sadharma Samstapakau. So they studied all the Shastras for the benefit of all humanity, and they wrote books. And Lord Chaitanya gave specific instruction to each of them what to write, and they did it to Rupa Goswami to explain the science of rasa, of devotional service, and the practical aspects, how to attain from whatever level we are, how to go to the highest level of Krishna Prema, which is experienced in Goloka Vrindavan, by those residents of Vrindavana, the Vrajavasis. And to Sanatana Goswami, he said to give the practical etiquette and rules for living in this world. So he, together with Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who also wrote the Satkriya Saradipika and Hari Bhakti Vilas. So these are books also who give practical explanations and advice how devotees can live in this world. But besides writing books, the Goswamis were very much engaged in the world. They were not ascetics who withdrawn from the world. They, as I mentioned, like Sanatana Goswami, was very much involved. He was engaged in helping personally the people, but also like Jiva Goswami, he was engaged in all levels of society. Even there are still documents of his exchange by letters with Akbar, the emperor at that time. And since Akbar was very generous and open to all religions, he was supporting the Vaishnavas. So there are specific donations given of land of Akbar to Jiva Goswami. So Jiva Goswami was a very expert manager, again, very much involved in the world and writing this high philosophy in the Sandarbhas. So that's the examples. And of course, Lord Chaitanya did the same, although we know that he, especially in the last years, he was not traveling to preach, but still he was meeting with devotees, and especially those devotees who are coming from Bengal every year to participate in the Ratha Yatra and stay for some months. He took time to give them personal attention of each of them, especially when they are leaving. There's wonderful descriptions in Chaitanya Charitamrita how he was embracing each devotee and giving them advice. And there's this group of devotees from Kulinagram, and then they were asking Lord Chaitanya almost every time, what can we do? We're just mundane devotees. We're engaged in mundane activities. We're householders. We work to maintain our families. How can be actually devotees? Can you tell us? So Lord Chaitanya always encouraged them. He never dismissed anyone due to their position in society, although he was sannyasi, and many of his close associates were sannyasis. But most of his devotees were grihastas, and he always encouraged them. And he didn't interact, of course, personally with their wives, but he acknowledged them. Like in Chaitanya Bhagavat, there is a description of, again, devotees coming from Bengal, and the devotees from Orissa, headed by Lord Chaitanya, were coming to greet them. So it was such a wonderful occasion, because these are many devotees, a few hundred devotees coming, and Mahaprabhu with the devotees. And there was such a joyful festival in the meeting. They were all crying. So it's mentioned specifically that all those devotees who were coming with their families and children. And Shivananda Sena, being a very wealthy and expert manager, was organizing everything for their trip. And of course the men came only close to Mahaprabhu. The ladies stayed away because he was sannyasi and was not proper according to the etiquette. But Lord Chaitanya acknowledged them, and he showed them to the men. He said, they are on, how he said, like, they are, your wives are such a great devotee, say they, in terms of knowledge and renunciation and devotion, they are equal to you. So he encouraged them, and of course we know the exchange of Shivananda Sena and his children. He always brought his children, even the young ones, the small ones, like Paramananda or Puri Das. So when he was really small, a toddler, he brought, and Lord Chaitanya didn't say, I'm a sannyasi, I'm not involved in in these family affairs and kids like that, but he actually gave him his mercy. He was very kind. He was asking, oh, such a wonderful boy, and the boy crawled and actually took the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu and sucked his foot. So Mahaprabhu let him, which was unusual, of course. But that son, he later on, as a boy, composed a special verse on the spot. A wonderful poetry, and Mahaprabhu was really amazed. He said, "You're a kavi. You're very special." So after that, he became known as Kavi Karnapur. So one of the greatest poet in our not only in our sampradaya, in general in India. What his level of Sanskrit poetry is considered as excellent, exquisite. So Mahaprabhu was very, very concerned and very careful. And we know another incident, and I remember of, again, part of the family of Shivananda Sena, when once he made a mistake of not arranging because he was caught in something and got delayed, and devotees continued, and when they arrived there was no place. The place were not arranged and there was no prasadam. Nityananda was hungry. He said, where is our accommodation? So he was upset, and he said, this Shivananda Sena is a rascal. I will curse his family, his sons to die. So his wife heard that. Shivananda Sena started crying. Oh, Nityananda Prabhu. When Shivananda came, and he was very happy. Oh, we got the mercy of Nityananda. And don't worry, he was telling to his wife, don't worry, we got the real mercy. Our family is now blessed. And then, but one of his was his nephew, right? He got disturbed by this, and why Nityananda Prabhu treated him so harshly? So he left and went ahead and reached Puri first, and went straight to Mahaprabhu, and he was covered with his upper cloth, which is not according to etiquette to offer obeisances to the Lord and to a sannyasi with your cloth on. So he offered obeisances, and one of the devotees, his servant, said, you have to take away your cloth, you cannot do. And Mahaprabhu said, don't do it, don't tell him anything. Obviously he is disturbed in his mind. So he counseled him and said, it's okay. And he said, from now on, when your family comes, including with Shivananda Sen and everyone and his children, they should be fed all the Mahaprasadam. From what is left from me, you give it to them. So Mahaprabhu was very, very, very careful. Of course, we know about the mother of Vrindavan Das Thakur, who wrote the Chaitanya Bhagavat, a great devotee. And when she was a small child, she is a niece of Shivas Thakur. And Lord Chaitanya, again, special mercy, he allowed them to give Mahaprasad from him to her regularly. And one day we know that he wanted to demonstrate, because Shivananda Sena was a little bit apprehensive that there were some soldiers coming. That because they complained Shivananda Sena is doing something illegal, they are they're in his home doing something strange, all night. They are disturbing us. They are making some noise and singing all night. So they complained to the Qazi, and Qazi sent some soldiers. So Shiva Thakur heard, oh, they're coming, they will arrest me, and he was a little bit. And Mahaprabhu, this is a long story, I won't tell it. He was saying, well, why are you afraid? Why? Krishna is in control. He's in the heart of the rulers, and if not, I will go directly to him and I will convince him. And if he doesn't listen, I will make him understand. Do you believe me? And Shiva Thakur, I will make them all chant. Everybody will chant. Even the Muslims will chant. And then he said, if you don't believe me, I'll show you. So he said, Narayani, come, chant Hare Krishna. And then she started Hare Krishna, and then she exhibited all these symptoms of ecstatic prema, and everybody was so amazed. So he was convinced, yes, no problem. So Mahaprabhu was very careful and very caring. Even at the point of being criticized, there was this case in Antilila of a small boy who was coming regularly. He was very attached to just hang around Mahaprabhu and the associate. And he showed affection, he allowed him to be around. And Damodar said, you cannot do that. You're a sannyasi. Do you know that this boy is a son of a young widow? Everyone will say, how can you do that? And Mahaprabhu acknowledged that this was his devotee was concerned. So still, he did show concern, and of course he wanted devotees to be involved in the world, to share. So he wanted each of his followers to become Krishna conscious, to become lovers of Krishna. That's the first thing he wanted, and then to share that with others. We know this is very clearly explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one of the most quoted verse from Prabhupada, Yare deke tare kaha Krishna upadesh. To whomever you meet, you tell them about Krishna, and in this way you tarai desh, you deliver, you help the people of your own land, your own place. So he said that to whom, you remember? To a householder in South India called the Kurma Brahmana, who was so attached just for the few days he associated with Mahaprabhu. He wanted to leave his family and go with Mahaprabhu. I'm coming with you. Mahaprabhu said, no, you stay here, but you teach others, you share Krishna consciousness, and thus you become their guru. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that Mahaprabhu told that to everyone he visited. So it was not a personal instruction, it was for everyone. And Prabhupada, of course, brought that and told us also. We become devotees ourselves, perfect our life, and share this with others. So we are a movement which is engaged in the world, and we have this two-track responsibility given us from Mahaprabhu and exemplified by our acharyas. They had such a deep and intense internal life. And we are so fortunate that they expressed it. They opened their heart, like Rupa Goswami wrote these wonderful poems. One of them, the Utkalika Valari, which means, Utkalika means a longing, but a specific longing connected with someone whom you miss. It's like a painful longing. And Valari means a creeper. So it's a creeper of prayers, of longing. So he's actually opened his heart, and we can read and hear that, and we can directly associate with Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada said if we read his works, but especially his heart, what is actually his deepest desire. This is something very, very special. It's a great treasure for us. So we can hear and become inspired and develop a similar longing. And other of acharyas also wrote similar. For example, the very famous Raghunath Das Goswami book in a very similar way, in a similar expression of the longing deep in the heart of the service to Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. That's called similar name, Vilapa Kusumanjali. Kusumanjali means like a handful of flowers, and Vilapa means also a great longing, a great desire. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also wrote Sankalpa, Kalpadruma. Kalpadruma is a desire tree. Always there is a connection with flowers and creeper, because that's the way we offer to Krishna. And he appreciates very much, offering of flowers. So it's a bouquet of flowers from prayers. So Sankalpa, Kalpavriksha means, Sankalpa means a determination and desire also, but it could mean also a cherished goal and of this Kalpavriksha, of the desire tree. And in all these works, they express their deepest desire, and we can have this glimpse in their hearts, but also they explain how this comes into fruition, how these creepers or trees, they give actual fruits. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, towards the end, it's about 100-verse poem, starts to glorify different devotees, and in his glorification he says, because of them, because once I had a chance to receive the mercy, now I have these desires. So this is one point I wanted to make, that like Maharaj mentioned yesterday about the two ways of practice of sadhana explained in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami. One is being the Vidhi mark, or the path of following the rules, and the Raganuga path, following the natural spontaneous attraction, which Rupa Goswami explains in the chapter about practice, about sadhana. And do you know how many it's a chapter about 310 verses about sadhana bhakti that includes vidhi and raganuga. Do you know how many verses are dedicated to vidhi and how many to raganuga? Roughly? Any guesses? From 300 verses, how many are about raganuga? Oh? The same? 10? Okay, a little more. 20, 25, something. And the other 100, the 270 are about Vidhi Bhakti, because that's how, we learn how to serve Krishna. And it's very detailed and practical. And we as Rupa Nugas, we follow Rupa Goswami, and it's very, very practical. But also Raganuga is very practical, but there's not much to discuss, because it's the same practice. And he mentions that the only difference between those is the motivation. The Vedi Bhaktas are only motivated, he says, by Shastra, by the rule of the scripture. Scripture says, you do it, I do it, and by Tarka, by logic. So you are convinced, and you are given this order, and you do it. That's the only reason you do it, your only motivation. So it's kind of out of duty you do it, and you know the benefit. And Raganuga is the only reason you do it. You also follow the rules of Shastra, but it's your great desire. The same word used there as strong desire, lobha. It's like a very strong actual greed. This is the qualification. But he says, but those who practice Raganuga with this strong greed, to attain the same service of the Nitya Siddha devotees of Krishna, they do the same practices, like hearing, chanting, and following all the rules given. So there's not actually difference externally, but internally there is. So Prabhupada explained everything, and he gave everything, but sometimes, some people say, well, he didn't give the esoteric part of Raganuga Bhakti, but it's there. He translated, gave the summary study, but everything is there. All these verses about Raganuga and Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, Prabhupada explained everything. So everything is there, but the key is not that we will not get it by reading about it. That's the point I wanted to make. The only way is to attain this, like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, these desires do not appear in the heart by our own volition. We cannot just say, okay, let me have a greed. It doesn't work like, can you suddenly just put some desire? You may artificially, yes, I desire, but he's talking about a natural, strong, unstoppable greed, which is very specific towards particular devotees. Can you artificially do that? It's not possible. It's not in our hands. What is in our hands is that we place ourselves, like here, I remember once Sachinanda Maharaj said, we have to be an empty cup. And because the mercy is there, we are giving all that. Srila Prabhupada gave all this up to the highest, but we have to be receptive and put the cup in the proper place so that we catch the mercy. And it will come. But we have to understand this is not up to us. We can only desire and pray for that, like these devotees, they pray. He even says in the prayers, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because of the mercy, I have now these desires, but that these desires fructify, I also need mercy. And one of his prayers is to Govardhan. And he says, just by nearness or being close to you, these desires, which are now in the desert of my heart, which is full of stones, you cannot grow plants in stony desert air, right? He says, my heart is like that. But because I'm close to you, Giriraj, these desires will fructify. They will give fruit very quickly. So this is the great gift we have received, and we have the chance. But we have to do our part also. It won't happen. Nobody will force it to us. We have to sincerely pray and ask for that, and follow this path which is given by the acharyas, the examples they gave. So what I wanted to stress, that the internal development is something Mahaprabhu wanted us. If we don't have this internal connection and strong desire to serve Krishna and taste for serving Krishna, what we'll do, how we'll share, what we'll share with others? We have nothing. So this is a primary responsibility. But we also have a responsibility, not only individual, but a collective responsibility for our immediate relations, our family, friends, a community, and the society of devotees and the society at large. That's why our acharyas, especially our recent acharyas like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada, they were so much stressing that. Even more than the internal development, like so important is that it's a parallel. It's not that this one is on the cost of other, but Prabhupada was so much stressing that we can develop internally by pleasing Mahaprabhu through serving his mission and going out, somehow being engaged with the world. And he was very particularly stressing that we should be very intelligent, how to be aware of the environment, of the time, place, and people to whom we try to share Krishna consciousness. He was very careful about that, and he was saying you have to tax your brains to think of the best ways to present Krishna consciousness. And you remember probably this story when these were the last weeks before Prabhupada left this world. During the night, he rang his bell, he called his servant and asked for Giriraj Maharaj, who was there also, to come. So he came and was like, Prabhupada, what is it? Something urgent is there, middle of night. And Prabhupada said, how will our movement continue? How will the movement continue? I'm leaving now. How it will continue? So Prabhupada was so much concerned. And of course, many times he said, if we are pure, if you keep our purity, means we follow our vows, we chant, we follow the rules, and we follow the advice and instructions of the spiritual master to read and chant regularly, we will be successful. So that's what Giriraj Maharaj has. Well, Prabhupada, we have to follow the principles, chant 16 rounds. That's how we'll be successful. The movement will continue and grow. But Prabhupada he didn't say it. No, it's not that. But his gesture hinted that he wanted something more. But Giriraj Maharaj he said, I didn't know what to say. And Prabhupada said two things: intelligence and organization. yes, purity is the basis, but we need also intelligently thinking how actually we can relate to the world in a way that will be relatable, that will be acceptable, to make sense. And organization means we do it together. That's the meaning of organization. And in another place, of course, we know famous statement: "You will show your love to me through the way you cooperate, through the way you together keep this society of devotees." So having a society of devotees is so essential. So these two responsibilities of the individual and collective responsibility, it's interdependent actually. That's what Prabhupada says. He's hearing the discussion among devotees is the only means to receive the message of the Lord. You can't do it alone. And I chose that verse because Maharaj a few times mentioned make use of the Sangha, not only during the classes and kirtans, but also in the association. Talk among yourself. And this is exactly what this verse says. Some bhashana. Bhashana means talk, and some means together. So talk together about Krishna, about how to serve Krishna, about how to spread the mission. And it's then the Sangha is so beneficial for everyone who is talking, who is asking, who is answering, etc. And it makes vitanoti sham, makes the peace and happiness increase of everyone. So it's so important that we focus on also on that part, not just care about our own salvation or own advancement. And Prabhupada was fond of this verse of Prahlad Maharaj: "I don't care of going alone in the forest. There are so many munis and sages who are concerned only about their own liberation. I want to go," Prabhupada translate, "to the fools and rascals who are suffering here and help them." And that's what Prabhupada did by example and expected us to do it. But we start first from from our own house. You can't teach others unless you give example. So therefore Prabhupada also expected that we are exemplary in our own ashramas, our own families, our own societies. Otherwise, if we show dysfunctional families, dysfunctional society, split in all kinds of controversies and conflicts and party spirits and different groups, who will be attracted? That's what the first thing people will see. They may be attracted by philosophy, but if there is nothing where they can identify, they can actually join a community or society, there is no, you can appreciate something, but there is no, you will not actually join and offer yourself. Submit yourself in your talents and everything you have in that mission. That's what Prabhupada expected. And he was so proud, for example, of grihastas. He proudly said, "My Guru Maharaj had army of sannyasis, but they were not successful. He sent them in the West, they were failure. And my grihastas, just 3 couples, they made a miracle." They made a miracle, and that's a fact in the history. They came to London and they opened the whole Western Europe and the whole world actually through the connection with Beatles and everything. It's a phenomenal success. And Prabhupada was happy and proud, and he said, they are family, they are just family devotees, not big sannyasis or something. So he was so proud, and he was so concerned that devotees have healthy and strong families, and also so disappointed seeing they break up. He was actually disgusted and really shocking how he was saying, how can some of his disciples, how can you break your promise? What kind of gentleman you are? You promised. How can you do that? For a cultured man like Prabhupada, it was just out of question. And of course, we know how concerned he was about children. He said, these children are not ordinary children, they are Vaikuntha children. Their scent was by Krishna. We should be extremely careful to create such an environment, safe environment, they could grow in Krishna consciousness. And how disappointed was that devotees fell in that. And even at that time, while he was here, there was cases of mistreatment, even abuse. And we know when he heard of some of the cases, of some extreme cases in the Dallas Gurukula, of physical mistreatment, he was so upset. Devotees who were there at that time, remember, he was upset for days, and he said those perpetrators who did that, they're not devotees, they should be kicked out. And he said before kicking them out we should hang them. So he was so upset. And unfortunately in the history after that we know that we completely failed. It was in many ways in the protection and care for children, for those who are dependent children and women. And it's a primary duty of each of us. It's not like the leaders and this and that and to blame someone. Each of us should be aware and thinking how we can contribute, that we create and maintain and grow a healthy community and society to save ourselves, our life. Because if we're in a if in a dysfunctional society or even not existing, how can we survive? We'll be disturbed also if the society is disturbed, isn't it? If we hear of some horrible, disastrous, failures and things which are completely opposite of Shastra and the example of our acharyas and pure devotees, we get disturbed. You cannot remain peaceful by hearing that. We cannot say, it doesn't. I will just continue with my practice. We will get disturbed. Anyone who has some integrity and honesty will get disturbed. So that means, we have to. Each of us has some responsibility towards the whole society of devotee society. And Prabhupada says we have this society which he envisioned as a house in which the whole world will live. We put that as a slogan often, right? Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world can live. But this house, we have to. It has to be a nice house, a clean, pure house. So if it's not, we have to do something. We are there in the house. If we consider part of it, we have to do our part to clean it. Maybe it's a small corner. It maybe concern a few people or something, but we have to do our part to clean it and to offer our best, to be best by example, the perfect gentleman. That was Prabhupada's definition for a devotee, a perfect gentleman. That means something. That means showing all these wonderful qualities described in Shastra. And by trying to do that, at least we can do a great service. And doing the opposite, displeasing Srila Prabhupada, there's no way we can advance. There's no way we can move towards these higher realms of devotional service. So, we can think of many practical ways because our acharyas were very practical, especially Rupa Goswami as the leader of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and we are Rupa Nugas. Besides the wonderful philosophy in the esoteric teachings, it's all boiling down to a very practical application, and we can study Srila Prabhupada's life and our Acharya's life, study his instructions, be in contact, in connection with him through his books, through his letters, his conversations, his lectures, and through his sincere followers who try to please him, and think of this as a primary duty, and have these two tracks of our individual development and the collective development as our a great responsibility, and in this way we can advance very quickly by pleasing Srila Prabhupada, and he can open all the doors to the spiritual world, and we can realize everything which the acharyas gave us in this process. Well, thank you very much. Are there any comments, reflections? Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mahendra Prabhu. Comment of appreciation for your class. You spoke out of my heart. How you pointed out the relatability to the world and kind of the social dimension, interactions among devotees and relating to the world, the care which those great examples in our parampara. We have they showed the care for people of being relatable. They went down to their level. In this way, the people felt understood. Like the nephew of Shivananda Singh who came trouble to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In an immature way, the devotees have tendency. It's just the mind, Come on, stick it away. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really react like he really took in account his being troubled, and he meditated his being troubled by understanding him and by giving a solution.
Yeah.
And I think this relates a lot to what Prabhupada said, we built the house for the whole world. Because if it's the whole world, it's the whole world. And whoever comes has a place here. And that also means we go to their level, we try to make them feel understood. Whatever issues and troubles or gender view or whatever they have, it's a house for the whole world. So we go to their level, we understand them, and we try to, and that opens a pathway, because if you understood to give some Krishna consciousness. So I'd like to add this, and I very much appreciate the class. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, Gaur Hari Prabhu, you had it.
Thank you also. Somehow I have little doubts how to combine the two, because it seems whenever we are engaged in some type of managerial things, and we get so easily absorbed in the world, and it seems to be so difficult to have absorbed chanting, absorbed reading, and so I'm just wondering how do you do the two, because I see in the time of Prabhupada there was so much faith in Prabhupada, so much dedication, and everyone was just surrendering full and to do whatever Prabhupada would ask. But I see now in our generation many devotees who try to do like this. I mean, not many, some. See, some devotees, they do a lot of service, but they feel dry inside, they feel unfulfilled, because it seems very difficult to keep the proper balance between the two tracks because of the absorbing nature of the world. So how can one devotee keep a proper balance between the two tracks?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up, and it reminded me of a very important point I wanted to make. Actually, it's a very essential that exactly, how to be engaged and not be involved in, and get distracted or just drained down by just the madness of the world and of all the society. And even our own society, you could really go become very upset, and there with justified reasons for that. So how to survive in all that? How to make sense? Sometimes it's just it's so difficult, and many things they are so. It's difficult to make sense, but. Yes, through Shastra and taking shelter. This is it. We understand, we have to understand properly and not be driven by the lower modes, which could happen if we just get into that external environment and involved. Even with good attention, we may be really involved, get somehow dragged by the lower modes, by for example, hatred, and which is a symptom of tamoguna, and so we have to keep composure by staying again in the proper track of the individual development, by hearing and chanting, being deep and in the storm, but not being neglectful of the storm, and thinking, how can I contribute? What is my role? What can I do? But being aware that this is a storm, is a dangerous thing, and not be depending on our nature. Of course, some people have the nature and they can do and want to do and can properly manage and be leaders. This requires certain nature and strength. Others are not. So we have to consider that, because if you jump in you it's not your nature, and you will be really disturbed in the mind. It will disturb your own practice. But still, even if you're more introvert and not that type of managerial, organizational expert. You can do something. Everyone can do something. That was my point. But all of us should do it by taking shelter. Never, disconnect. If we think, let's have the solution, let's do it, we should have that mood, but under the shelter Krishna is in charge. He's person. The absolute truth is a person, and he's in control of everything. So whatever plan we have, whatever action we want to take, always present it to Krishna. This is my plan. I don't want to make it independent of you. I don't want to act whimsically, to Guru, to Srila Prabhupada, to Krishna. And the example I wanted to give, which you reminded me, was about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It was a perfect example to be so much involved in the world, being a judge, and dealing with heavy cases, even with a case of a deviant so-called Vaishnava, who had some actual power. He did some austerity, and he put him in jail. He was uncompromising. If you make a mistake, if you break the law, you go in jail. No matter if you're a mystic yogi, Vaishnava, whoever you are, you have to get the consequences. This is what Shastra says. If you're sincere Vaishnava, you may not need to do a prayachita for your own purification, but it doesn't mean you don't get the reaction for your crimes. And there's so many examples in Shastra, in Bhagavatam, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, about devotees who did mistakes. Not real grave mistakes, but some mistakes, and then they had to suffer heavy consequences. Nobody excused them, but they were devotees, as Krishna says, we had to respect, and they will never perish. This is the guarantee of Krishna. But they have to suffer. So anyway, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was engaged. He was a judge with a big family, was very organized. And he's set up the whole idea of organized preaching through his Namahata program in families. And but what was his mood? If we study Sharanagati, his mood was of complete dependence. He was saying, "My Lord, it's yours. This is your family. This is your society. I'm just a guardian. You entrusted me with this service, with this responsibility. I'm a guardian. So if we're in that mood, we might be disturbed. As Prabhupada sometimes said, I also get disturbed in the management, especially during the fight with the Mumbai case, for the Juhuland. It was such a strong fight, and Prabhupada was just pushing and pushing and pushing. And then finally it was resolved. But during the process, some devotees were complaining, Prabhupada, I can't chant peacefully in my rounds. It's just too much. Prabhupada says, I also am disturbed while chanting. And later on he reflected, it was just too much effort, too strenuous. We won at the end, but he will acknowledge. So Rupa Goswami says, prayasam is over endeavor. So we get involved, but still we have to be careful to not be overly absorbed, and then we lack and miss the connection with Krishna. And that shelter, we need to always be there, aware that Krishna is in charge and we're instruments. So that example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was interesting, that he was a very responsible father also, but once one of his daughters was the custom, and still is in India, the parents are to a great extent responsible for helping their children, arranging their marriages. But one of his daughters were of marriageable age, and he hasn't arranged anything. And his wife was once complaining. This was a story from Gaur Govinda Maharaj. His wife said, "You have to do something. People will start talking about that you're not doing something. Your daughter is just coming of age, and you have to do something about it." So he went to the deity, to Gopinath, and said, "My dear Gopinath, this is your family. Please do something. Otherwise, your name will be, tainted. They'll start talking about bad, and you will get bad, publicity. They'll talk about." So he was not concerned about his name and prestige and position, but about Gopinath. Now, So do something, please. It's your family. These wonderful verses in Sharanagati. Now I surrender everything to you. It's your family, your children, your house, even the fence, he says. It's yours. The animals in the house. I'm just a guardian. I'm just trying to maintain it on your order. So anyway, he prayed to Gopinath. Next day, a marriage maker came with an offer of a qualified boy. The next day, so Gopinath takes care. Krishna will take care, but we have to be responsible, sincere, and pure, and be connected. Be always in the shelter of Krishna, and that's only possible to hearing and chanting among devotees. So this is what I can say. But it's a very valid point, and I appreciate it. We have to be careful, especially when it's not our nature, and we get very disturbed, and then we have to try to help in whatever way we can, but still try to be responsible. Maybe not in direct management, but in so many other ways we can help build a healthy and strong society. Any other comments?
I have a question.
We still have time because Gaura Hari Prabhu said we can go until 9:20, 9:30.
Practically, how to ensure that we are in shelter for a beginner who just started with the devotional practice?
How to be sure that we have taken shelter?
Yeah.
We follow what Prabhupada writes in the books. And the basic things, as Prabhupada said, that we have to put Krishna in our life, somehow or other. Stay connected with Krishna. That's the practical expression of taking shelter. And as Maharaj explained yesterday, the basis and the essence, which Rupa Goswami said, which is again practical, is to somehow remember Krishna always. And we can remember the memories come from our impressions in the mind, which means what we take is what will come back as remembrance. In other words, we have to get impressions of Krishna through the sound vibration, especially of the holy name, of Krishna's words and devotees' words in the association of devotees. By hearing regularly and enough, sufficiently, then we'll have strong impressions and we'll remember Krishna. And that's the practical shelter. But also, it means that we, with our volition, with our will, our desire, we specifically ask for shelter. We pray. This is part of the devotional process. We go to the deities or to a picture even of Krishna, and you submit yourself and say, "My dear Lord, I take shelter of you." Like, read Bhaktivinoda Thakura's songs, like Sharanagati means taking shelter, the path of shelter. And just by reading that book, you already learn exactly how to do it. But you ask also, you say, "I submit myself, please. Take care of me, maintain me, use me in your service." That's asking for shelter. It's like if you have to go you need something, you go to a powerful person, how you take shelter? You approach and you ask, you beg. That's very essential. You cry. Yes. This is what our Acharya said. Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was asked, what's the essence of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti? And he said, Dake. In Bengali we say that Preme Dako Chaitanya Nitai means the calling out, crying. The crying for Krishna's mercy. But also it is very essential that you take guidance. Bhakti means we get guidance. So you have to have your nice association of devotees who are more experienced. You take guidance from them also how to practically surrender, and then you'll be in a safe environment. Yes, Bhagavad.
I just add a sentence, and there is that little detail which you mentioned. It's important. When you take shelter, you just don't cry, "Oh, me suffering here, there," but you always refer to Krishna, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said. Gopinath, if you don't take care of it, it's your place. I take shelter. Please take care of this. Because of your fame, I like that your fame be spread.
Yes, Thank you.
We go with this mood of you have to give me, I'm missing this and that, and you're very self-centered. That
Yeah.
can go the wrong direction. You can do that, yes. We have no other shelter, we can go there. But it's always good to remember.
Who is in the center? So when we cry and we pray, it's Krishna in the center. That's
It's a fine,
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
fine subtle point to
Yeah.
remember. And thank you for mentioning.
Yeah. Thank you also. Anything else? Thank you for your patience. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.